UFC 264, Poirier vs McGregor 3, the trilogy takes place this weekend, and in the main event there is so much on the line for both fighters, but especially for Conor McGregor. Everything is on the line in this trilogy against Dustin Poirier. If he loses, he could fall off completely, but he does have some bounce back opponents that are a potential consideration. If he wins, he could be well on his way to another championship run and achieve greatness once again. So what I've done today is I have made an alternate universe simulator for Conor McGregor, win or lose against Dustin Poirier in their trilogy. You may notice there's a second bracket as well. If he wins or loses the fight after that one, this one down here could end in absolutely nothing and his career being over. This one up here could end up in complete greatness and maybe reasserting himself in that GOAT conversation, at least in the top 10 at least of all time. Let's go through it right now. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, UFC 264. What side should we start with? I say let's go off of the win situation first and we'll end on what happens if he loses. Let's try and start on a positive note rather than being all negative to start the video. Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier happens around here. If Conor McGregor wins against Dustin Poirier, I reckon his next opponent will definitely be Charles Oliveira. And I'm glad I did this side first because it's more of the obvious side of things. This is obviously what's going to happen if Conor McGregor wins. He'll get the title shot against Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira is going to be cage side in attendance at UFC 264. So it just makes sense. And even if Dustin Poirier wins, the next opponent will be Charles Oliveira. But that matchup is great. You've got history with the beef between Conor McGregor and Brazil. Charles Oliveira looking to get a comeback for Jose Aldo. Maybe there could be some moments in the promo where Jose Aldo shows up at Charles Oliveira's gym, gives him a couple of tips on how to get KO'd in 7 seconds. I don't know what tips Aldo's going to give Oliveira in all honesty, but even still, Conor McGregor, Charles Oliveira makes sense as the next fight to make if he does beat Dustin Poirier at 264, especially if he does it impressively as well. And to be honest, if McGregor comes back and destroys Poirier in round 1, I don't mind his chances destroying Charles Oliveira in round 1 either. So he could have a real good chance of getting back that lightweight belt. And if he wins against Charles Oliveira, in my opinion, he's not going to call out Khabib. So let's say that Conor McGregor here beats Charles Oliveira and moves on to the win-win stage of this alternate universe simulator that I have built for us today. So he wins. I don't think he's going to call out Khabib Nurmagomedov. I don't think he's going to like the image of that. I think also by the time he does take on Charles Oliveira, there's no way Khabib is coming back. In all honesty, the more I think about it, like, why would Khabib risk his undefeated legacy that he has? Maybe the best lightweight, well, definitely the best lightweight of all time. He has that legacy in stone. He is the greatest lightweight of all time, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Why would he risk that after 2 years off of not training hard whatsoever to come back against Conor McGregor in the main event, or come back against Conor McGregor in any circumstance after that much time off? I don't think McGregor would want to be seen as the guy begging for Khabib to come back either. So I think if Conor McGregor does beat Poirier, then beats Charles Oliveira, his opponent down the line would be Kamaru Usman, or whoever holds the welterweight belt by the time he gets there. I think that is a great matchup for McGregor, and I also think it's exactly the matchup McGregor would want. He's been talking shit to Usman for a very long time, and I know people would say this: McGregor has no chance against Usman, he'll get completely destroyed. The fact that you're saying that is the reason why McGregor would want that matchup next after the Oliveira one, if he does win. Of course, this is an alternate universe simulator. I'm not saying any of the things that are going to happen. In fact, I think Poirier's going to beat Conor McGregor this weekend, so I don't think any of this stuff is going to happen. But if it does, I think McGregor will call out Kamaru Usman. He has nothing to lose. If he wins, he's amazing. 3 belts, 3 different divisions, in the GOAT conversation. Not in the top of the GOAT conversation, but definitely in the top 10, maybe even putting himself closer towards that top 5 area as well. He's definitely going to be in a great conversation if he does end up beating Kamaru Usman. But if he loses, so what? You were a featherweight, you moved up to lightweight, that was impressive enough. Now you're moving up to welterweight. No one's going to call him a pussy bitch for losing to Kamaru Usman. It's Kamaru Usman, plus he has a bit of a better chance than people think because lightweights are really good. Although they aren't as big as Usman and the other welterweights that there are out there, Gilbert Burns landed that big shot in the first round on Usman. What if McGregor lands that same shot? Does Usman take it the same way? Does he get wobbled a little bit more? Does he get head kicked afterwards like Burns did, but this time it's a little bit cleaner because it's McGregor? There is a chance for McGregor to win, and also a redeemable who cares if he loses because he took on the challenge. Just like Adesanya moving up to Jan Blachowicz, there was no chance he would have any backlash whatsoever because he was respectful, and also because they're not going to blame you for losing when you're trying to move up a division. It seems to go well for people. So if I was McGregor, I'd look for a free payday against a welterweight champion if I beat Charles Oliveira, because that way, if you lose, you've still got your lightweight belt and you've still got another championship payday. Free win, no loss for Conor McGregor if he takes that bout. But if he loses to Charles Oliveira for the belt, I believe a 170-pound move is definitely inevitable. I don't think he'll be in a position to call out Nate Diaz, which maybe we'll get to in a second. If he does beat Poirier, then loses to Charles Oliveira, and ends up in this situation down here, I reckon the Nate Diaz fight is out of the question. He's too highly ranked. If he beats Poirier, he's probably going to be number 1 in the lightweight division, maybe number 2 just below Gaethje if he loses to Charles Oliveira. A little bit too highly ranked to take on Nate Diaz, in my opinion, and justify that fight being made. So I think if he does lose to Oliveira after beating Poirier, the Masvidal matchup will be made at 170. Maybe at this time Masvidal's coming off a big win against someone who's going to get him in that top 5 position. Maybe Masvidal hasn't fought whatsoever, but he's still ranked number 8 or number 7 at welterweight, and McGregor doesn't mind his chances, because honestly, now that Masvidal's been chinned and put out cold by Usman, and he's really old as well, and he's only getting older every single day that goes by, maybe McGregor doesn't mind the matchup with Masvidal anymore. Maybe McGregor thinks he can catch Masvidal on the chin and put him out cold as well. I think that's a great matchup to make, a great super fight as well. McGregor versus Masvidal, 3 million pay-per-views, not 3 million, but a free 1 million pay-per-view buys out of anything. You could do that regardless of what position in their career they are in. If you make McGregor versus Masvidal, it will sell 1 million pay-per-views. McGregor's going to see that, and I think he will go for that if he does lose to Charles Oliveira. People will expect to see Khabib on this list. I don't think he's going to put himself ever in that position to beg Khabib to come back. I think he's going to try and outdo Khabib, go up to 170, and that's something that Khabib never did, and talk shit on Khabib by saying that. Look, Khabib, you're bigger than me. I'm the guy moving up to 170. You drained yourself to depletion every single time, and you didn't even make weight against Gaethje in your last fight. Like, he can use all of that ammunition on Khabib, even though he lost to him, to say that I'm doing things that you never did before. Like Daniel Cormier, instead of calling out John Jones again, moves up to heavyweight, beats Stipe Miocic, gets all that credit. Everyone forgets about the John Jones losses. Who cares about the John Jones losses? He's the double champ. He'd beat the heavyweight championship of the world. So I think McGregor has a real chance to get out of Khabib's shadow and go up to 170 and fight some fights there. But these two outcomes could happen. Moving on to the losing side of things. Conor McGregor, if he loses to Dustin Poirier at UFC 264, I believe a matchup between him and Nathan Diaz will be made, because McGregor will be low enough ranked. I reckon he'll probably be floating around number 9 or 8 in the lightweight division, which is perfect for him. And you can get Nate Diaz, who you can justify as saying, hey, he's just outside the rankings. Hey, Michael Johnson beat Tony Ferguson and Nate Diaz beat Michael Johnson. So therefore, Nate Diaz is still somewhat of a good contender in the lightweight division. He beat Anthony Pettis, who was a good lightweight. So there's a lot of ways you can spin that to say that Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor makes sense. I think that'll be the number 1 fallback plan for Conor McGregor if he does lose against Dustin Poirier. Plus, I know Nate Diaz is looking good recently, but I think that Nate Diaz is just, he's not the same anymore. If I had to hedge a bet, I'd say McGregor would beat Nate Diaz even if he lost to Dustin Poirier. So I think it's a great matchup to make. Dustin Poirier, if he beats Conor McGregor, fall back to the Nate Diaz fight. McGregor versus Diaz 3. Great trilogy. And plus, for Conor McGregor, Diaz finished him in round 2, I believe it was. McGregor won a close decision the second time. So that's not really finished business, in all honesty. It is finished business. McGregor won the second fight, but he would love to do it perfectly, I would imagine. He'd love to be able to be the guy who got a finish over Nate Diaz. Maybe that's what he'd try and do, and that's what he'd motivate himself to do. Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor, if he loses to Poirier. If he beats Nate Diaz after losing to Dustin Poirier this weekend, I could see a matchup when he's in this position being made between him and wait there while I readjust this, Mr. Justin Gaethje, who I believe will beat Michael Chandler if they take each other on. I think in the meantime, while this fight happens, after McGregor loses to Poirier in this universe, they will make Gaethje versus Chandler, and the winner of that bout will fight Conor McGregor to try and get him back into the title shot position, and I'm sure they would welcome that fight as well because it's a massive fight. I know Michael Chandler would love that fight if he did beat Justin Gaethje, and I think Gaethje would take that fight as well if he didn't know he was getting a title shot next. So, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, if he does beat Diaz after losing to Poirier, I think that's a great matchup to make. Two heavy hitters, there's beef between them, they've talked shit before. Gaethje has talked a ton of shit on Conor McGregor. Gaethje does not like Conor McGregor at all. Makes sense to me. I think that'd be a great matchup. Plus, if Poirier beats McGregor, it's kind of hard to justify Gaethje getting a title shot because he lost to Poirier. Poirier would be more deserving. So I think Gaethje's going to need a good 2 wins to get back in that title picture, especially if he takes on Michael Chandler next, who doesn't really have too much stake in the UFC. He has 1 win over Dan Hooker, and that's about it really in the division. So Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler. I think Gaethje wins that one. If he does and McGregor loses to Poirier, then beats Diaz, make that matchup next for another title shot, and we'll get McGregor back in the mix. I know it's complete favoritism, but this is just how it works to sell millions of pay-per-views. Then Conor McGregor, the most sour of all outcomes. And this will really be sad if this is how it goes down for Conor McGregor. This will be a Rousey-esque loss streak that really doesn't look good for him. Maybe even worse because it's not against champions like Rousey was. If Conor McGregor loses to Dustin Poirier here, then loses to Nate Diaz here, and ends up in this position down here, I don't know what UFC fighter will be a good matchup for him. I don't know what MMA fighter will be a good matchup for him. But if I was McGregor in that position and everyone said I was completely done and I was a laughing stock because I'd completely fallen from grace and everyone was making a joke out of me and I wanted to sell 1 million pay-per-views when I couldn't do it in the UFC because I'm not high enough ranked, because if he loses to Nate Diaz at lightweight, McGregor might be unranked at lightweight. In all honesty, if he loses to Poirier, he's going to float down to number 9 or 10. If he loses to Nate Diaz, who has no stake at lightweight whatsoever, he might be maybe 14 or 15, while Nate Diaz is at 12 or 11. Or maybe he'll be unranked and Nate Diaz will take the number 15 spot. You never know. If he does end up in this sour position down here, the worst of all outcomes. Team 10, bitch. Jake Paul, I think, is the matchup to make. And I think that will be where McGregor's eyes turn to when his night is the darkest. When he is having the hardest time in life possible. And he is completely crushed. And everyone is making memes out of him losing and losing and losing. And he can't sell any more pay-per-views. And he needs more money. Well, he doesn't need it, but he wants more money. And he wants to get back in the mix. And he wants to be the people's favourite champion again. He will look to the Jake Paul fight. And if Jake Paul's beaten Woodley by then, and Jake Paul's then gone on to maybe fight Mayweather, and listen, Logan Paul made it reasonably competitive. Let's say an older Mayweather another year or 2 from now loses to Jake Paul. McGregor versus Jake Paul all of a sudden makes a lot of fucking sense. So that would be the matchup he would look to in his darkest moment of his career. Other than that, these are the matchups I want to see made. And yeah, that should be the progression. I don't think Khabib's coming back. We need to get over it. He's not coming back. I know he keeps teasing us and he said he'll see if anyone impresses him at UFC 257. I just don't think it's in the possibility whatsoever. But maybe, just maybe, if McGregor beats Oliveira and instead of moving up to welterweight, he fights Islam Makhachev and beats him, maybe, just maybe, then Khabib will come back. I can already see the image in my head. Conor McGregor, Islam Makhachev. Let's say Conor McGregor wins just for the sake of it. I'm sorry, Khabib fans, for being angry. You're going to be angry about that because I mentioned a potential universe where a Dagestani fighter would lose. Fuck off. Either way, if McGregor ends up winning against Poirier, Oliveira, then Makhachev by KO, and he looks around after KOing Makhachev out cold in the first round, and he looks and he points at Khabib in Makhachev's corner, and Khabib jumps over the cage and gets in there, and they have to separate them, and it's Khabib and McGregor. They are making that fight 100%. I don't think it's going to happen, though, because I don't think McGregor would want to be declined by Khabib and made to look like a little bit of a bitch after his big win. I don't see that happening. I don't see him begging. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. These are the potential outcomes of Conor McGregor's career. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.